Does anybody remember that All in the Family theme? Is that it?
Oh yes, it's also
It's all
pentatonic.
pentatonic, right?
Yes.
What does that start on?
Again, it's on. What's it start on? It starts on. Starts on the low 5.
All the family.
Yeah, that's it.
3, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 1, 1. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 5, 5. 6, 5, 5, 3, 2, 1, 6, 6. 3, 2.
Hi, Mary, you lay on it.
That's a good one, huh?
Okay, everybody gather in close. This time I want you to play that chord progression. G, E minor. And if you want to get a chair, please do. Get a chair, come on up. We're just going to do some singing.
We are all old men.
So quickly, to summarize last week's thing, which I told you about, and those of you that weren't here, we did what's called an isorhythm. An isorhythm means I just take a simple rhythm, and I use it over and over and over again. Okay? A good example of that is the first Bach piece that we learned, where he just did what? Tarzan drum, Tarzan drum, Tarzan drum, Tarzan drum, Tarzan drum, Tarzan drum, Tarzan, 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 Tarzan drum, Tarzan drum, Tarzan drum. Right? So you just use that over and over and over again. Okay? So let's say I have something like this. Drum, Tarzan, drum, Tarzan. Now, if she starts out on the number 1 and plays the pentatonic scale using this pattern, okay, let's see how many different patterns you can play. Yeah, just use the pentatonic. That's called an isorhythm, just a single rhythm. And then sometimes I can just make a, play it like 3 or 4 times in a row, and then make one little change at the end to cut it short, as we did here. So, okay, so she's singing the pentatonic scale, and you're doing this rhythm. 1, 2, 3, 5, 3, 5, 6, 5, 6, 1, 6, 5, 3, etc., etc., etc. Okay. Now, the next thing is what we call rhythmic curve. What I want to do is take this and push it up and down in the scale. And what I'm going to do is just guess at it. I'm not going to try to define it definitively. I'm just going to guess at whether the note's going up or whether the note is going down. Okay? So play just one measure of this. Something. Want to write that rhythm, she starts out, does the next note go up or down? Up. 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 Down. 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 Up. Right? Down, 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 down. Is that what we roughly heard? So now what I do is I draw in the, just put in the flags here. You see what I have now? This is what I call a rhythmic curve. We now have something that I can put on a napkin, take home, and when I sit down in front of a piano, then try to figure out what the melody is. And I have something here that will help remind me of what that was. Because so many times I've been on a bus or an airplane, I've had an idea, then by the time I get off the airplane, I can't remember what the hell the melody was. And I found that by writing out the rhythmic curve, that gives me a better chance of recovering it. Now you started on 1, right? So now the next thing to do would be replace the rhythm with the rhythmic curve. And now, what we want to do is, let's say this is like rough cutting. It's like whittling. I got a piece of wood and I want to do this rough cut out of that thing, something that kind of looks like a train. Okay? But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and I'm going to do really fine little cuts and bring forth the detail, right? So now I'm going to go and work on the detail. Well, what we do is we draw the music staff, which is, and I'm going to say this, and you will not find this in any book, anywhere, because everyone in the world is wrong except me. There are 5 lines and 6 spaces. Now, every book says there's 5 lines and 4 spaces, and that's because they're narrow-minded people that can only look inside the problem. They don't know how to look outside of the problem. When you look outside of the problem, you realize that for every line that's put on a piece of paper, you've created 2 spaces. For every line I draw, I've created 2 spaces, okay? So I can't have 5 lines and fewer spaces. Okay? So here's a space, there's a space, there's one, there's one, there's one, there's one, and what do we have? 5 lines and 6. 5 lines and 6 spaces. World, every book is wrong, everyone in the world is wrong. Wrong! I'm right. 6 lines, 6 spaces, 5 lines. That gives us 11 notes to play with. And this thing that we heard was not 11 notes wide. Now all we need to do is do one more thing. We have to decide which line or which space is our number 1. Now what I'm going to do is, for the sake of upness and downness, I'm going to say this line right here. I'm going to put the X on it. And I'm going to say that line there is the number 1. Could be. Why not?
He's throwing darts, dude.
The reason I'm doing it is, as I just said, I know that the music is going to go below the number 1, so I need to have some room. If I put it down on that thing, I have nothing down, nowhere to go. When you write music, the reason you put it in a key is to make it look pretty. Every book I've ever read on writing music says that music is an aesthetic thing, not a scientific thing. And that the job is to make it look as pretty to the human eye so you want to read it, number 1, and 2, so it won't confuse you. So if we use what's called ledger lines, a lot of lines below and a lot of lines above, especially if any of you people have seen flute music, where there's about 10 ledger lines and all the notes are up here, and why they even draw the staff is beyond me. Why did they even draw the staff? I ask you, since it's all on the staff. It's all on the ledger line, right? Okay, so what I learned is the reason sopranos, altos, tenors, and basses all had their own clef was to force the bandwidth of their voice onto the staff. So sopranos, clef was at the bottom, where bass clefs were near the top, because basses sang low, and we wanted to come down onto the staff. And so the sopranos say hi, we put their clef way down here, so we could, again, so the notes would land on the staff. So my reason for picking that, I would have maybe picked the middle one even. So I had some room below. Okay, so your first note was 1, right? So let's just draw a dot where she had the 1. What was the next number?
What's that?
It's 2. She only went up 1 step. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Then you went down to what? 2. Back to 2. 1, 6, 1. Now we have, now I want you to notice, you notice that the dots here have the same curve as my rhythmic curve. All I have to do now is split the stems on this, and you will recognize that it looks like now a piece of music just like anybody else's piece of music. Now, the reason I'm laying this on you is this is the fastest way I know of mere mortals writing melodies. Being able to take a pencil and pen and start out with a simple rhythm. Then just hum that rhythm over and over and over in some scale. And just hum it until you get something you like. Then figure out the rhythmic curve so you have a way of remembering it. Then go home and sit down in front of a keyboard and grab your black keys if you want on the piano and just play the black keys and figure out the pentatonic scale for it. And then take and put it on the set, just as we did.